Hi, Tom.
Hi, Scott. Hi,
Hi,
neighbor.
everybody.
Got a shirt that matches your house.
Didn't even think about that.
Thanks for catching the typo.
Roll?
Oh, there was a typo in the vision.
Yeah. You're welcome. Thanks. Thanks for doing the work.
You read copy for a living. I count on you.
I do a lot of it.
Yeah.
I was just saying, Scott, I was like, everyone needs a Scott in their world just to like look over all their stuff before they send it on to the whoever.
You know, I have to apologize. I know it can be maddening to have somebody who's that detail oriented, but I know if I'm reading somebody else's work and they're trying to make an impression on me and I see that stuff, it drives me crazy.
Yeah.
So I don't want
I
to.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
I could imagine though it's a pet peeve.
Oh, I don't know if it's pet peeve or not.
You're in the word business.
I appreciate that you.
It is
you
for
follow
me.
it.
Especially if I read a resume or a letter of interest and there is a grammatical mistake or I just, yeah.
Yep.
Turns me off. I'm ready to not even talk to him.
I appreciate that.
Okay.
It's being an editor, in my other life.
Yeah. Lee said he was going to join us tonight. I didn't hear back from Ron.
Ron actually emailed me directly that he would be on his way. So.
Okay, good. Good. That's great. Did anybody from the community pipe in?
So this didn't require an RSVP. So outside of just making it public and then emailing all the people who did participate the link, kind of no guarantees if you'll have someone or not. It's been really hit or miss if we see extras join in.
I really enjoyed the charrettes. They were fun.
Yeah.
I think that's where we met Scott.
Yeah.
It is. And I think I sat down and we talked for 2 hours and 15 minutes.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Do we want to go ahead and get started, Miranda, and look at what feedback has been presented to this group?
Yeah. So Karen, I think you may have been left off a few of these emails. It actually looks like Tom and
went
team,
back and filled them in.
Yeah. When they actually worked on it prior to this meeting.
Nice.
So this meeting would really just be more to kind of quickly review it. And I think it's ready to go. So we could be fast and efficient here.
You guys did your homework. That's awesome.
I don't like to improvise with in front of a crowd.
It's hard to build a document like this in committee on social or video.
Yeah. Lee, how are you doing?
Hey, hello everyone. Can you hear me?
We sure can.
Okay.
Your video's locked up, but we see you.
Okay.
Can Chris Larson hear us? I see he's on, but I don't.
Yeah, I'm on because I'm on the trainer. I'm getting in my exercise for the evening, so I wasn't going to subject you guys to the view of me sweating away here.
Oh no, turn it off.
Definitely multitasking.
Well, and that was the other thing is I was logged on and didn't get to chat for a few minutes because right as this meeting started, I got a call from Congressman Negus's office.
What about the grant?
Yeah, about the grant and in the fact that he is looking to do a cross district tour on May 23rd at 9 a.m. He wants to do a visit here in Ned.
Cool.
In part to see the egress and also just to talk about wildfire mitigation, preparation, and recovery.
That's really cool.
Isn't that like the third or fourth time, Chris, that he's come up and visited us? It's so nice that he's so engaged.
It is. He is doing an incredible job for us. And so I just wanted, you guys got the first word. We'll get this on the calendar for the rest of the public, but May 23rd, we get FaceTime with the congressman.
Chris, great. Did he say if the funding request was complete or if he needed anything else from me at this time?
Not yet, no. No,
okay,
this was just about the setup for the tour, and they're still working on the community funds.
Cool.
Terrific. Miranda, it's all yours. You want to pull up what I sent you earlier?
Yes, I didn't know if you wanted to. I can. Give me one moment.
Okay. Lee, what was that map behind you?
This map is a map that my grandfather and my uncle had of the United States and Mexico from, let's see, it was printed in Chicago by A.J. Nystrom & Co.
Mhm.
I'm not sure what the date is, but let me think here. I can see right away, but it's pretty old. I think it's before Hawaii and Alaska were part of the states.
That's great.
Um,
That was a good.
and I-
That was a great present.
uh,
Okay, folks. This is let's see, Lee, thank you so much for simplifying everything. That was my starting point. Went back and compared it to what we had posted already, tried to make the integration, put it out to everybody, and think Chris looked it over, and Scott made some improvements today. So this is the product. This is where we're at right now. So let's look it over and see if people are comfortable or if I missed anything.
So Tom, I just had a question about this first one about the future of the IGA versus home rule. Should this really be and home rule? Because
Yeah.
it would really be statutory. Okay, just
Yeah,
you.
I was just gonna point that out. Thanks, Miranda.
That's why I put it up front so we could find it easy. Okay.
I gotta tell you that I like this the way that it is, but I'm really a specifics guy. I really hate vague language.
Yeah.
I really do. You know, my girlfriend's an attorney, and attorneys can twist vague stuff any way they want.
Yeah.
And I really hate vague language. And I also think right at the time here, we really need to focus. I mean, all this other stuff is foo-foo. We really need to focus on downtown. What's going to happen downtown? It's going to happen sooner than we think. And if we don't have our ducks in a row, we're going to end up with a building that looks like the building at 27th and Pine in Boulder, a big black box that's 35 feet tall with $1 million condos.
Yeah, I know the one.
Yeah. So anyway.
Okay.
I think this is fine.
Good. Go through it, Lee. Let's. If anything can be tightened up, let's do it.
I can't really see it very well. Let
Okay.
me see if you can go through it.
It's the same one that I sent it over to you earlier today. If you want to pull it up on your computer.
Okay, let me find that. Okay, let me pull it up here. I think pull it up on this if I just tap it. Let's see here. Focus. Okay, here it is. Here it is. So the first one, Netherlands Board of Trustees and Community will decide the future of the IGA and home rule. I think that's perfect the way it is.
That's a good change. Yeah.
Any comments on that?
I actually have a question.
Good. Oh, go ahead, Scott.
And I don't want to change that. I'm just curious if anybody has seen that there are conversations taking place in Facebook groups about this very topic around the IGA. And
no, I haven't seen it.
Yeah. So there's a number of individuals out there who have been trying to solicit opinions and actually like simulate a poll or a survey, or you'd almost call it like an election, getting people to vote to keep it or throw it out. Two choices based on like a very, very short 2-sentence introduction. And so people are already starting to get their tails wound up around this thing a little bit. And
I have a suggestion that sentence won't make much sense to some people unless you spell out and say community development intergovernmental agreement. Because
I think you're right, Karen.
Yeah,
let's make it so.
We have so many IGAs between the county and whatnot.
Yeah, I appreciate it. But now I'm curious, Scott, what's the verdict so far?
Well, a bunch of people were saying, well, we got to keep this thing because Because what we're being told here on Facebook is if we don't have this thing, people will be able to build anything they want anywhere they want, which of course is not entirely true. And I
Correct.
chimed in to try just rein the whole conversation in. And I said, hey guys, I don't think it's very fair to give people an opportunity to take a position on this when this is like, I've read the contract, I've read the agreement. It flows out much further than just what 3 sentences can provide in a Facebook post.
Right. And the
Yeah.
other point, Scott, is it doesn't become a free-for-all. We would just revert to the statutory requirements for annexation, which in themselves are interesting and strict, and there's certain threshold where it would have to go to a vote. So I read that. Of course, I don't really weigh in. I just like to see what's being talked about. And it seemed more like a fear tactic to get people afraid of looking at a different option, whether
It's the
go
It's
ahead.
the usual suspects who have been
Yeah.
agitated about this for the last couple of years and are just taking a chance to try and get out ahead of the next round. And, it's Facebook. It's the same half dozen people.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, well,
The danger with it is,
Mhm.
my concern is you give people a couple of sentences that come from somebody who's already got a position, and they take a stab at trying to appear to be neutral on it, but they
Right.
put
They're
a
really not.
choice out there. What they do is they're getting people to have an opinion on something without them really having much information.
Yeah, Facebook had the issue something at 6 o'clock this morning about that.
Yeah, then there's that. I mean, this is what Facebook does,
this
right?
is why
Yeah.
Facebook's a cesspit. And
So I don't know that there's anything we can do about that in this document. I just thought it was worth mentioning to this team that this
I
is a
think you did the
conversation.
best that can be done, Scott, is you're participating respectfully and inserting a fact here and there.
Yeah.
Do
think
you
you're right.
also agree that we might want to say, and home rule versus statutory governance or something like that? Because I think home rule by itself might also be confusing to some people.
Yeah.
I'm good with that, and I think we need to rely less on what Facebook says, and really what we're trying to do here is put out a goal. In this case, I think we want to be vague.
You're right.
And I think we just want to try to get people to start debating it, and really, I've read over a lot of what people said, and there's a lot of good points on either side. So I'm kind of undecided myself on it.
Right. But all we're saying here is this is going to be looked at.
Sure.
It's on our agenda, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Which actually is representative of the community, which is what we want this Envision 2030 document to be.
100%. Yeah.
With no bias one way or another.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
Karen,
it's perfect now.
You and I swapped a couple of emails a week or so ago on this topic, and you forwarded me the doc, and I appreciate that. I think if we could create just, in the background, in all the spare time that everybody's got, I'm sure, we could just create a little comparison that says, look, here's what we like and don't like. Very, very high level summarized. Here's what we like and don't like about the existing IGA. And here's where we think we could improve it.
And Scott, we actually did create a document like that for our forums that we had and our public meetings with our boards and commissions. It's a little dated, but I think it would still be pretty accurate. So if you want me to dig that up, if you wouldn't mind, just send me an email and ask me for that, and I'll dig up, I'll work on finding that.
Scott, go ahead and copy us so she can respond to all of us. They're on this team.
Do you want me to forward all the information I sent to Scott as well with the link to the Boulder County web pages that show the whole history of the conversation of the IGA and all
I'd
the
appreciate
various versions of the IGA? Okay, cool. And actually the document I'm referring to might actually be in there. But anyways, I'll be happy to share that. Just send me a reminder.
Oh, well, thank you, Karen.
Bullet 2 is pretty is non-controversial. I think Scott made a good thing to make them available online, so I did that. The third bullet Lee, do you want to? This is one that you put together. Do you want to talk about it a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think it just makes sense that when there's redevelopment in town, and when people are going to be digging up the road to connect to sanitary or gas or whatever, that if it makes sense to replace or to upgrade the infrastructure in that area also, especially if it's in an old part of town where we know that the infrastructure is aging and leaking and doing what it shouldn't do. I just think that's a really smart thing to do. I've heard recently that we got a grant. I think the Public Works Department got a grant to underground the utilities in First Street. That concerns me for a couple of reasons. I would love to see.
We haven't gotten that grant.
Wait, we haven't gotten that grant.
Okay.
And so what you might be confusing is the Transportation Improvement Project grant I was sharing with you at one of these meetings.
Yeah.
Where the work being done is actually to improve the mobility from the RTD parking lot to the visitor center. And that as long as they're tearing up the street and whatnot, we're talking to Excel about potentially burying their power. But that's not the same as the one you're referring, which has to do with the burying the power on First Street where all the businesses are.
Okay, well, it's the same kind of idea. Basically, I think it's smart when we're digging stuff up to dig it all up and fix it, especially stuff that's old. If we do get the grant to replace or to underground the overhead lines on First, it would make a lot of sense to also look at the gas and sanitary sewer lines that are in that area also, and water. But anyway, that's the idea of that bullet.
Good. Lee, I would say the next bullet is largely you too. It boiled down some things that were more directive, but do you want to talk about this?
Well, I think that, if there are any reserves that we have, and I had heard a number, I think from Chris or from Karen, that we had 6 months of reserve, whether it's the DDA or the town, I think that it's smart to, at least put it in some sort of CD, where we make some interest on it. And that's all we're saying there. We want to stay strong financially, but also if we're not going to use the money for 3 months or 6 months or 9 months, it makes sense to earn a little bit of interest on it. That's all I'm saying on it.
Makes sense. Karen, I'm curious, how were our sales tax revenues holding up?
We're actually doing really well. Last year we ended up, I think, about 7% higher than we did in 2019. And this year, right now, we're trending at about 10% up. And the one thing it's pretty cool. And then the one thing I did want to say in reference to what Lee is talking about is the town has finally, in my opinion, gotten to the place where we have reduced our debt and we've increased our reserves to such a place that we can look at investing it in a very, very safe vehicle. And this is something that the town treasurer and I have been talking about and looped in the mayor, and we're going to be presenting at a board meeting this summer about investing in Kahlo Trust, which is so well known. Just look it up, Kahlo Trust. They're amazing and very protected, and a lot of municipalities throughout the state use that investment vehicle. So anyways, your timing's good, Lee, but also the town had to get to the financial position where they could start looking at some sort of investment vehicle, and we're there.
Hey, Karen, how do you spell that?
It's Kahlo, like Colorado, Kahlo Trust. And I worked with them when I ran the Scientific Cultural Facilities District, which is included all 7 counties. And you know, we were investing tens of millions of dollars at a time, and I can attest to what a great and safe investment vehicle. And you're not going to make 10%, no way, but you're going to make more than you do in a savings account, and it's very easy to move money around.
How much did we pay our debt down?
You know, I don't have that number in front of me. That's a great question, Tom. If you follow up with an email, I can send that information to you.
Happy to, thanks.
But some of our loans that we've had in place since 2008, for instance, you know, we've already got 13 years now, 12, 13 years. So now we're getting to a place, and a lot of that has to do with utilities, you know, the water plant, and then the wastewater facility, and then the biosolids facility. But we're positioned really, really well.
That's great. Let's go down to the zoning map one. Lee, anything that you want to add? Because you and I have beat this one to death.
Yeah, I mean, again, you know, I caught some flack on this one because I wanted it to reflect reality. I'll give you an example. Lakeview Heights, where the new red is built, there's a brand new red house behind what used to be Emberling Engineering.
Yeah.
You've probably all seen it. It's on the north side of Highway 19, across from the Catholic Church. You know, that area, Lakeview Heights, those lots are about 4 times bigger than standard lot. They're like 16,000 to 20,000 square feet. And they have zoning, which has a 40-foot rear setback and a 30-foot front setback, which basically makes the lots almost unbuildable, except for really narrow, skinny houses in the middle of the lots. And so there's just an example of where the zoning, I mean, you have a lot that's 4 times bigger than a regular town lot, and you've got a 40-foot rear setback. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. And so I think that's just one example. I have many examples, but I think that I don't hate the zoning map. I just want it to reflect the reality of the situation here and be updated as needed.
So Lee, I think you know this, but you know, the whole strategic plan for the town is once the Envision 2030 is done, then we move into the comp plan update, which includes the zoning map. That's how you update the zoning map, through the comp plan exercise. So I just wanted to make that clear. That's on everybody's radar as well, and definitely a part of the strategic plan for the town.
Great, Karen, when does that come up again?
Well, we're doing the Envision 2030 process first. That's what the Planning Commission and Board of Trustees agreed made the most sense. Then that will inform the update to the comp plan process. So I'm saying that could probably happen beginning of 2022, who knows? But you know, it won't be much. It won't be very far down the line.
It wasn't that long ago that 2022 seemed like a long way off.
Right, exactly.
Okay, let's I think we get that one. I got counsel from a number of other groups that we should include this next bullet in here. Does it make sense, or is the wording appropriate for what each of you guys weigh in now?
Are you talking about the one about climate goals, environmental concerns?
Yep.
Okay.
The only,
I mean, I think the BOT needs to always keep that in mind. I mean, it's a daily thing. Environmental concerns, climate concerns, I mean, are a daily thing.
I think, from my point of view, on this one, on this one item, is that let's leave it in. All of the I think probably all of our subcommittees got this memo to put it in as an important thing. But I would like to see, when we bring this all together and write the executive summary, that becomes one of the overarching pieces that is not broken out in a subcommittee level, but is something, because it shows up in all the subcommittee pieces, it becomes one of the driving factors in the Envision 2030 executive summary, the thing we get print up and put up on the wall. And so that we give it the emphasis it deserves for all the subcommittees, but leave it in here for now to give that impetus.
Agreed, completely.
Chris, I'd like
Um,
to offer that I think it belongs with every committee and it belongs with every process that takes place within the town. I think it should be pervasive in the documentation that it's to be a consideration. To your
Yeah, and I
point.
think that was, yeah, and I think that was something that these subcommittees talked about in like one of our first meetings.
Yeah.
Was that we were going to have a separate climate committee because it was going to be a part of every single committee.
yeah, and I think, Scott, you'll see it in across the board when this thing the next round of these things goes up.
Okay.
Let's go down, Miranda. Economic development. How do people feel about the vision statement at this point?
I'm fine with the vision statement still. It's fine.
Good. Yeah, I like the part about it becoming or being continuing as an economic hub for the region. We're sort of geographically and financially there, and I think I think we spent some time on this. I just want to make sure that before we move on, that people are still comfortable with it. And let's go down to objectives. Infrastructure. Does anybody have anything to add or tweak there?
I think that all looks great. I think we need to constantly be thinking about how we're going to optimize getting from one end of town to the other, walking, biking, other than in a car.
Yeah,
I
agree.
And I also think that we need to, like in the part, we need to repair downtown commercial infrastructure as redevelopment takes place. And I really think that the redevelopment is going to take place a lot sooner than a lot of other people think.
Yeah.
So
I
that's
agree
just
with
my feeling. Yeah.
Okay, and then okay, culture.
This is what we talked about in the last several meetings, and it reflects that perfectly.
Beautiful. Lee, I've never heard you be so agreeable.
When it's right, it's right.
It's okay, good.
To your earlier point,
get
Lee,
too far out.
When you had mentioned
Go ahead,
that, Lee had mentioned earlier that vague language is home turf for attorneys, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a lot here that people can interpret the way they want to. So I think it's good if we try and keep in mind the spirit of each of these as opposed to just the words around it and how somebody else might interpret it. So that's why I threw that extra bullet point in earlier today.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Well, Scott, you missed some really good times at the beginning.
I'm here for more good times.
Okay, should we move down to safety?
Sure.
Yeah, I found when I looked at it today, there were some redundancies. I tried to pull some of that out, but I think ADA accessibility is going to be important. Karen Garrity, do we have any wide open ADA issues we still have to deal with?
Well, I mean, there's all kinds of places around town where mobility is challenging,
Okay.
especially on First Street, which we were just talking about.
Yeah.
The sidewalks, the sidewalks are not ADA compliant, but that's just one example. But yeah, there's places around town that we could definitely make more ADA accessible.
Even those of us with twin knee replacements have an issue with some of the sidewalks.
Right, exactly.
Okay. Anything else that needs to be added, tweaked, changed, folks? Commercial. Let's go down to that, Miranda. There isn't much. I mean, we started with something that was far more controversial. I think we boiled it down a bit, and basically the gist was that it has to reflect what the DDA and the business committee wants, balanced with what the town wants, balanced with what investors would like to see, and that's appropriate for the community. So kind of compressed it into one statement.
You know, it's wonderful because you know, it again, I would like it to be specific, but that's for a different time.
That sure was fun a couple of weeks ago, wasn't it?
Oh, it was great.
Okay, good.
I really don't like flat roofs.
I know.
So
I hadn't guessed.
Yeah. So I would be willing to break the height limit if it's not a flat roof.
Lee, I'm going to get you a T-shirt that says "Ask me about flat roofs."
Yeah. You know, if you want to see what Netherlands can look like in 20 years or 10 years, if we don't have code that makes sense,
right,
and that's clear, go to 27th and Pine in Boulder and look at the building that I just laid out and finished doing the condo map on. That's what it's going to look like.
Well, yeah, and then there's a whole streak along where Walnut Street, where I work, that's just is 100% that way. I just changed jobs and I'm in the Randolph building now, and when I look out, it's flat roof city.
Yeah, and flat roofs remind me of prisons.
I haven't been there. Lee, have you done time?
There must be history there.
Maybe we should, if you flat roofs won't look nearly as bad if we require them to cover them all with high density solar panels.
Yeah.
So every flat roof in town gets covered and starts generating electricity. That might be more
useful. It would be an interesting, it would be an interesting if we could do if the DDA ever could get behind a rooftop solar garden, it would be interesting. A pooled solar garden with a microgrid.
So Chris, that's a great example of taking the environmental climate change aspect and thinking about it as we talk about.
Exactly.
Right. And I think that's exactly what we want to be doing every time we talk about development. And you know, I think since we're talking about flat roofs and we're talking about roofs that are not flat, I will say I don't mind roofs that are not flat. My own roof is not flat. But I don't want things to get built up so tall that we're, you know, that every street is a little canyon.
Yeah. Lee, I thought of you today because I'm in a flat roof thing in the Randolph Tower, and there were hoses running up and down the halls to get all the water off the flat roof.
Right. I mean, here's what I'd like to say about that. It's just as easy to put solar panels on a sloped roof as it is on a flat roof. Sloped roofs, right, especially if they're facing south, if the sloped roof is facing south. And secondly, you know, there's no way that it's going to be a canyon on First Street or on Second Street. There's no way. If there's a bigger building in the area where the Crystal Shop is in that block,
right.
The stuff on the south side of the street is still only 1 story tall. So I mean, I don't see any way that it can end up being a canyon. And I would much rather have some design, some actual design, as opposed to just a big box, you know?
Yeah.
I just don't like big boxes.
If Ron were here, he'd be talking about getting rooftop dining, which I'm all in favor of. I'd love that.
Ron is here. And,
good.
Has been for a while.
Okay, welcome. On the commercial side, commercial bullet that you're looking at, anything else to talk about?
Well, one of the things with flat roofs, as you're just told, with hoses running down the hall, it's not a question if a flat roof is going to leak, it's when it's going to leak and on whose desk it's going to leak on.
Today was mine.
I kind of thought it might have been. So we have a worldwide problem of population increase and no increase in space on the ground. And unless people recognize and understand that you've got to accommodate that, or a good portion of the population all over the world is simply going to be priced out of the market. And that's an overall view of not just Netherlands, but a lot of places.
Right.
And the buildings that Lee is talking about, because of the populative pressure and the limitations in Boulder of building, the land value is so high, they had to put as much building as they could possibly get on the site and build it as cheap as possible. I took a look at it and I think it's ugly as hell. It's a box, and that's it. Well, and I heard you talk about the Lakeview Heights place up there. That new red house is a box. There's absolutely no character in it, whatever. If you feel that that's compatible with Netherlands surroundings, I don't. So, but I think overall there's a real problem of perception about height, and as a result, height limits don't increase. And as a result, property values go past the ability of the average person to be able to afford things, and that is creating a huge economic cleavage in our country that I think is really bad.
Well, and also keep in mind that the design decisions you're referencing, both here, the one in Netherlands and in Boulder, another driving factor of that is simply that the people involved are seeking to maximize profit, and they make that the driving factor. And so as long as that's also the driving factor of development and investment, you're going to end up, even if you raise the height limit, people are going to build to fill that height limit. You make it 50 feet, they build a 50-foot tall box. So
yeah, I would love to see peaked roofs. I feel the same way Lee does about having something that's suitable for a place where it snows a lot.
You know, there's ways around it. If you don't want to have a 50-foot high box, you know, if you're, let's say that you want a sloped roof, you put it in the design code that you can have 3 stories with a sloped roof that is this high. You know, it can be very specific. You know, it doesn't need to be, you can build 50 feet high a box. You know, you can put in there, you can build 40 feet with a 6-foot sloped roof, or an 8-foot sloped roof, or you can build 35 feet with a you know, 10-foot sloped roof. You don't have to just open it up. But I think that when you think that money is not the driving force, I mean, that's just crazy, because money affects everything. And what Ron said is exactly true. The land is worth so gosh darn much money that not only does it drive out people that are making $15 an hour or $20 an hour, but it forces developers to maximize. And so we need to stay in front. We need to be proactive, or we're going to end up with a bunch of 35-foot boxes. You know,
Lee, run for the planning board.
Yeah, I guess I've already got a elected job, so I don't know.
Yeah. Folks, anything else on commercial? I think we boiled it down quite a bit. Do we want to say anything else?
No, I think it's unfortunate that the subject always comes up that categorizes developers in total as just seeking to maximize their profits. That's a shame.
It's unfortunate, but Ron, I got to say the opinion he's voiced is widely held, and it's not a personal thing against any particular developer. You know, there's an old saying about lawyers: Well, at the risk of offending anybody, I'll make a joke and say, it's only 95% of the developers that give the rest a bad name. And it happens everywhere, right? And I get it because I'm a finance guy, or I know the whole point is when we say optimize, we really mean maximize. And so we have to, as a committee and as a town, we have to make sure that developers don't come in here to this town and just have the ability to do exactly that. It's not a thing against developers or any individual developer, but that it happens so often that we have to be on guard for it.
Yeah. Do we need to tweak this at all, or are we good to publish?
I'm just curious when the opportunity will come for specifics to come up.
I think that's where it's Miranda. That's the kind of the next step piece. So our plan is to go before the Board of Trustees and really ask them 3 questions. Do they want us to, well, more like 2. Do they want us to stop here where we are and not go into the specifics, and then switch gears and focus on getting funding for the comprehensive plan and allow that to be the document that has specifics? Or would they like us to continue with the Envision 2030 action plan as originally presented, which then would allow us to go into really the performance measurement standards and those specifics? And so it'll come, Ron. I think it's a question of in what format does that happen? One of the concerns is if we make a Vision 2030 action plan, and then we also have a comprehensive plan, will those 2 documents align? And what happens then when they don't? Because the comp plan is statutorily required, where the Envision is just more of a Netherlands specific document that is desired by the community. So long story short, we'd like to get board weigh in on May 5th or May 18th to see what they think and how we move forward.
It's on my calendar.
Perfect.
That's wonderful. And I guess I'd like to say something about what Ron was mentioning. It's not bad that developers, I think, and people in general, it's not bad that they want to make money.
Right.
That's fine. That's great. And also, I think you can harmonize making money with also making something that's architecturally cool. And also you can put in low income housing into some of these things also. I mean, it doesn't have to all just, obviously you're not going to break ground if you're going to lose money. But at the same time, there are ways to tweak it where it becomes a win-win. And so we as a community, we have the ability to make it a win-win. Either we can make it so that we have unique buildings that look cool, that shed water. I mean, I had my desk filled with water today, this week also, because it's a flat roof. And also, it's not necessarily bad to have something a little bit higher. It's not like we're protecting the Flatirons view here,
Right.
And it's a downtown area. This is a downtown. It's not like in the boon somewhere. So anyway,
I think this is one of the things that happens. People are always worried about how much developers are going to make, and that's the wrong question. What they need to ask is, what's the community going to make out of it? What is the multiplier effect going to be of a development that brings $1 into town, and then that dollar circulates in town 5 times, and say it's taxed each time at 10% or 8%, but for round figures, say 10%. The town just earned 50 cents on $1 or a 50% return on the investment. So those are the questions that never seem to get asked. And always they're asking, well, how much is the developer going to make? Wrong question. How much is the town going to make?
Agreed.
So Lee, you said something that was important, and I think the word that sums it up is win-win, right? So no developer is going to want to build anything if it doesn't make some money, obviously, but it needs to be, it has to hit the hurdle rate of return or better. Otherwise, they don't build it. Otherwise, it's not a good investment. But maximizing cannot always be the only goal. That's the problem with parts of our economy now, is when the only number one goal is shareholder value and growth, then we don't have any restraint. And so win-win, right? We only develop when it's profitable. We figure out, how many times does that dollar circulate through town and really help the whole economy, Ron, to your point. But we don't do anything so that 10 years later, half the town's going, man, do you remember how great it used to be?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I get that. I think I've looked at the plan. I don't have the new plan on that you've done. I know you've done 4 or 5 plans, but I mean, I've looked at the plan that was like 4 or 5 years old, and that plan again seems like a win-win to me. I agree. We want to have a win-win. I mean, when we did Mud Lake, it was a win-win. When we did the Wingate conservation easements, it was a win-win. I have some other ideas for the Wolf Tongue site, that I think are great. That some people have probably already thought of them, but we need to keep that in mind. It doesn't need to be developers versus the citizens. It's developers and the citizens working together to try to make it the best that it can be. And some of these designs that I've seen are really freaking nice. So, I mean, the Crystal Shop is not an architectural wonder. The Quonset hut on 2nd Street is not an architectural wonder. The old Mountain Burger is not something that is going to end up in Architectural Digest.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
The current Thai restaurant.
Yeah, the current Thai restaurant. It's not an architectural wonder. But at the same time, I don't want it to just be big, boxy, black buildings with $1.5 million condos in them.
Yeah.
Well, I'll get you that. And Scott, I'd like to give that to you too, and give you a narrative if with Lee there, or maybe not. I don't know. So
I'd like to be there too, Ron, and I think we all would.
I'd love to.
Well, you're all invited. Anybody's invited. It's been circulated around town. There's a couple of older copies still in the library, I think.
Right.
But
they're getting kind of old.
Yeah, but the concepts in the thing were thought over and worked out over a period of 10 years. And I think most of them are probably still valid. And I'd love to show it to you again and get your input. I'm always receptive to suggestions and ideas, because there is, I feel, a tremendous amount of brain power, not mine. I was architecture firm.
Right.
And the Blackwood planning firm did 90% of the job, because I'm not competent when I know
and
it.
They're damn good firms.
So sure. Anytime, I'd love to show it to you.
I'll work with you on that, Ron, and set up a time.
That'd be great.
Well, Scott, I mean, I definitely want you there, because I think you have a lot of good ideas, and some I don't like at all. But then you're not going to like all of mine either, so I know that.
But we're talking.
Right. Let's go for win-win.
Okay.
So it sounds like you guys are set with this document for Envision 2030.
From my standpoint, yes. Anybody else want to weigh in?
Well, I have a question, if I may ask. So I looked through a lot of the feedback today, and I see a lot of different specific points in the feedback I saw from the public about, very specific stuff around building codes, design standards, heights, the bridge across the creek, noise levels. I mean, you name it, land use, you name it.
Mhm.
But we can't go down to the detail level. We can't go into the nuts and bolts in a document like what we just discussed and we all looked at
Yes,
together.
that's correct. I mean, this really should be a high point view, 30,000 foot view of more visionary type statements and objectives that are more general. I will say some of the committees have gone a little bit more specific. It's really going to be up to the Board of Trustees how they want to move forward with
Okay.
this document. If they could choose to just go with the vision statements, they might decide to go with the visions and the goals, might decide to go with it as far as the objectives, might decide to save some of the objectives and those kinds of things for the conversation when we update the comprehensive plan. So we're really advising committees, as staff, we're neutral in the process, but at the same time, we want you to have a successful process. And part of that is to stay more in that visionary mode as opposed to getting down into the details, which tend to have a certain bias, because again, this is supposed to be representing, the collective community. And the best way to do that is by staying in the more general, what is the desired outcome, as opposed to us real specifics on how we get there.
It's kind of like business process outsourcing, where we create the process and somebody else is going to own the process.
Exactly.
So at this point, how do we go about feeding back to all the public who have given us feedback so that they feel like they have been heard when they don't see the specifics that they mentioned, the things that they really want that are
Right.
not appropriate for this doc?
That'll be the staff's job, and Miranda and I'll be working on a memo, and Miranda will be presenting that to the Board of Trustees at their May 18th, I think is the date, meeting. But we also have one more meeting with all of the committees of Envision 2030, and that's next Tuesday. And that's when you all have a chance to kind of have a conversation around, this presentation that we're going to be making, and the finalized document and your finalized vision statements and whatnot. And that's where you could have, Scott, some of that conversation about that.
Cool.
And
Thank
Scott,
you.
because I sit on two others, and Ron does too. I think many of us do. You'll see that people have taken real different strategies on different subcommittees and how far down the rabbit hole they want to go.
Yep.
And one of the things Steph is going to try to do is to, once you guys all kind of finalize your documents, what we present to the Board of Trustees, we're going to try to standardize it so that the formatting is a little bit more similar. So there isn't this wide swing between the visions and goals and objectives. So that's something I'll be taking on.
Thank you
But
for
not
doing
changing the
There's a question.
content.
Lee?
I'd like to add. So, how many people of the total population? What was the percentage that? I mean, I read through a lot of it. What was the percentage of people that responded, to these documents?
So, okay, so there are different phases of this process. So we had something like 70 or more people who originally replied to the original survey that we did on the town's website and through, social media and all that sort of thing. And then, of course, the committee formed. That is now about 12 or 13 people. I think it was up to 16 or so, but people have dropped off. And then we've had like another 100 or so participate in this phase. Is that right, Miranda?
There were 92 people who participated in April. And to Karen's point, I believe it's 72 who did SWOT surveys, and then 12 for our committee. But again, it was 16. So we're looking at, about a little shy of 200 people who participated. The SWOT analysis were anonymous though, so I can't, that could include some duplicates. But again, we're looking at just shy of 200.
So
Quite a few.
what's the percentage of the area of the total area?
So
Well,
I
if
don't
you
know
just-
that.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Karen. No, I was just going to say, I don't know. I mean, we obviously have people outside of the Netherlands jurisdiction. And so we're looking at the population of the whole peak to peak area. And Karen, I don't know what that is. as of
Well,
today.
the whole peak to peak, you'd be
Say
looking at
5,000.
5,000, but then you'd have to look at how many of those are actually adults who would be participating. Although we have had some teens participate, and specifically at our charrette, but a certain percentage of the population is going to be kids, you know, like younger than 16, for instance. So, and you know, I would say the majority of the people who have been responding have been from the Netherlands area, while we actually have a representation on our committees of people who are outside the Netherlands area. It's kind of interesting. It's
So Lee, the
actually
math works out 2%.
Yeah.
Or more like about
Again, I mean, again, I'm really against minority rule. I really am. And I really don't like people that have an axe to grind, you know, dictating what happens in our town. This is what happens consistently, and it's happened for the last 40 years that I've been around, where, you know, 20 or 30 people change what the other 1,500 people want.
Well, I have to say that I personally give big kudos for Miranda for her innovation and how we could continue this process. And the last time this was done, there were 300 people involved, but that was not during a pandemic. So I hear what you're saying, Lee, and I will tell you there's been self-monitoring done amongst the committees, which has been very interesting, where there's been cross-pollination between the committees and they've sort of been checking each other so that some of these very detailed, specific visions, goals, and objectives have been removed and altered that were really showing individual bias. So I just want to say that. I'm not saying it's perfect, but I do think the process has resulted in an outcome that is valuable.
I agree.
No, I agree with all that. I just think we should be cognizant of the fact that, you know, most of the people that have an axe to grind are the people that
Sometimes.
And we actually got a lot
yeah.
of really positive responses, Lee. You wouldn't believe people who reached out and said, boy, this process, we're amazed at what it's produced. Good job on these vision statements, talking about how great the town is. People even had positive things to say about municipal government. So I think, Lee, you know, you've got kind of a skewed lens. While you've been around a long time and you've probably heard a lot of negative stuff from a handful of people, I would say there's a lot more people who are actually very positive, happy with the town. Of course, there's always ways to do things better, but there's a lot of really pretty happy people here. And I think it isn't said enough.
Yeah. Good.
Well,
We're at the top of the hour, folks.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree with any of that, Karen. I'm just saying that we need to realize that this percentage is very small. The responses that we got are very small percentage of our population.
Point taken.
So it looks like we're done with the evening or with our time. Are you guys feeling okay moving on?
Let's move on.
Sure.
And then we'll see you all next Tuesday when all the committee members get together.
And then the big meeting in a couple of weeks in front of the Board of Trustees. I had it on the calendar already. We were going to discuss water. Is that getting postponed?
That is
Yeah,
getting postponed.
yeah.
It's now moved to June.
Okay.
Yeah, just too many other things right now, too much town business and such.
So Tom,
much
that's on the June 1st agenda, if you want to change that on your calendar.
I will. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.
Good
Ron,
night.
I'll call you shortly to set up a time. And Lee, have a good trip tomorrow.